All right, here is my official prediction for the entire Premier League table for the 24-25 season. Let's kick things off with the relegated sides. Now, some people say this is rogue, but I've gone for Ipswich at the bottom, which many people I think would agree. I've actually gone for all the promoted teams to go back down in this order. So Leicester, Southampton, and Ipswich. What do you guys think of that?
Um, I actually think it's like quite the safe option, if that makes sense. It's not. It would not be unusual to see them three go down because last season the exact same happened. Um, so yeah, I think it wouldn't be good for the Premier League if this did happen because you want to see a bit of variety. You don't want the same three teams coming up, three teams going down, and that means 17 teams are the exact same every year. But that doesn't mean your prediction's wrong if it's bad for the Premier League. It can definitely happen. None of the three teams, seem a massive standout of like there's none of them are like a banker to stay up.
No.
So that's sort of yeah, where I do half agree with sort of they definitely could go down.
Yeah, so my logic was basically Ipswich. Yes, they were good. Yes, they played attacking football, but they've not really upgraded in their signings. Like, obviously, you've got to remember they signed Hutchinson for about 19 mil, but they had him last season. So, although it's a signing, it doesn't really count as an upgrade. And outside of that, I've not seen enough. And I think they'll be, similar to Burnley, where they try and attack, doesn't work, and could end up getting spanked every week. I think for Southampton, the ones I feel probably most bad about putting here, because I actually do really like some of their signings. Like Ben Berrett and Diaz have obviously done the TikTok on that. I really like that signing. So I don't know. Southampton maybe could surprise us, but I don't know. I wasn't that confident enough to put them in the survival section.
Yeah, I think obviously last season with all three promoted teams going straight back down, it's not a good advert for the Premier League if it happens again. But that's the way it is these days. But yeah, looking at it, I mean, of course, we know Leicester have them financial sort of constraints, lost Maresca over the summer, and sort of have players they can't really invest massive amounts or like what they used to. Ipswich, of course, with their underdog story, with their back-to-back promotions, I think it's understandable why they're there. And then you've got Southampton as well, who, like I said, play some good football under Russell Martin, but are very much a team capable of winning 4 on the bounce and then losing 4 on the bounce. So they're going to have to make sure they get that right. But I can see why you've gone for it.
Yeah, and on Leicester, to your point, losing manager, arguably best player, and a potential points deduction. They've got a good manager, but is it enough? We will see. Let's move on to the lower mid-table section. So I've gone for Everton in 17th. I'll do them all at one time and then we can talk through them. I've gone for Brentford. I've gone for Fulham. This is actually updates. There you go. Wolves. And then Forest. So I'll start with Everton. So I know you guys both, I think in both of your respective videos, had them higher up the table. A lot of it was based on kind of last season's form, and obviously had the points deduction, did well. But my logic with Everton is a bit like the Hamburg situation we saw in Germany, where if a team keeps knocking on the door for long enough, at some point they're going to go down. Like Everton, obviously the club that never been relegated, etc., etc. There's been a few seasons now where they've been in that mix. Obviously the Lampard season, last season, even with the points deduction, there was moments of a bit sweaty, let's say. And I just think eventually it's going to happen. And although I'm obviously not backing them to get relegated, I think they're going to be pretty close this season. What do you guys think on that?
I get where you're coming from. I think obviously finishing 15th last year with their points deduction is still a good result. I think with Everton though, defensively they're good. That's what defense keeps you in Premier Leagues in a way. That is no doubt. And if Calvert-Lewin, can stay out of the hospital, he's going to score goals for them. They've made some very shrewd acquisitions. I don't think Onana's that much of a huge loss, but Jake O'Brien coming in from Lyon looks a very good defender. They've got Braithwaite as well. Pickford's looks like he's got better and better every single year. So if they can score goals up front and keep him out the back, I think they'll finish higher. And bear in mind as well, their last season at Goodison, they're going to want to go out with a little bit more positivity. So I get the logic in that. And I think the other teams as well make sense. I think you got some, teams who can be pretty good defensively, but maybe just a bit inconsistent.
Yeah, with Everton, I think you're underestimating them based on the points deductions, though. Because if they didn't have that points deduction, they would have been nowhere near the bottom of the league, and we wouldn't have spoken about them in a relegation battle at all. Sean Dyche, you got to remember, Sean Dyche was brilliant for Burnley, kept him in the league for several seasons. I think Everton have got a bit more on them. So I think Sean Dyche is probably a great appointment for Everton, and he's shown it. And I think he won't get them into a relegation battle this year. I think there are teams worse than them. And like Reece said, their defence is probably what will keep them up. Their attack, they do need to improve the attack, I think, because Calvert-Lewin just doesn't stay fit. You can't just rely on him. But I think they're trying, and I do think they'll just stay up. So, but the rest of the ones you've put here in the lower mid-table, Brentford, to be honest, I can see them definitely fighting, being in that place again. Fulham, they've lost one of their main players, but they were comfortable last season. Same with Wolves, really, a comfortable sort of position. So I don't see him pushing on. So yeah, I think they're a fair result on where you've put them so far.
Yeah, my logic on the other teams is basically Brentford. I just feel like they're losing a little bit of momentum. If Tony steps up again, maybe they won't have much of a relegation threat. Fulham, as you said, Palhinha's gone. I'm not convinced that Smith Rowe is the answer to that problem. A different kind of player. Ismail is going to be the same. Wolves, I'm torn on Wolves. I don't have an opinion on them really either way, which is a bit strange. But I think Forest is probably the most rogue based on they've not really signed anyone. They've let a few players go. But I've just got a feeling we're going to see a bit more momentum from last season with that attack. Two good strikers, two good wingers. And I really like their centre mids as well, to be honest. Moving up the table, so let's go into the next one. So I've gone for Bournemouth. I've gone for Brighton, then Palace, and then West Ham. Oh, and then another team in there. This updates, and then Spurs. So starting out with Bournemouth, again, this will change. This is kind of asterisk with if they keep Solanke. If they don't keep Solanke, I'd have to chuck him somewhere around. I'd chuck him somewhere around here. But what we saw under Areola last season, we saw a side who actually knows how to play together. Kirkes, really like him as well as a player. And I think they've got enough about them. They've got a good style of football under Areola. So I'd see him being able to just keep some of that momentum and stay above this pack here. Brighton, again, I don't know. I just feel like they're in a bit of a weird situation at the minute. They've had all these players with potential and they've got this methodology, but they've lost De Zerbi, and I don't know. It just feels a bit like they're caught in the middle. I don't know whether they're going to have a good season or a bad. So I kind of put them in, I guess, neutral zone in mid-table. Palace, again, yes, they've lost Elise. We've said it in the earlier episodes, but they've replaced him with Sarr. Not saying they're the same player, but very similar style of player. And Sarr, I've been impressed from what I've seen of him. So I don't necessarily think Elise is going to cost them big, personally. You've got Mateta, who, well, not just Mateta, all of their attack were flying under Glasner at the end of last season. And if they keep that momentum, I think they're going to have a really good season. West Ham arguably won the window in the Prem. That's obviously open for debate, maybe another episode. But Fulkrug, Somerville, handful of other gems in there as well. New manager, new style, new era. I think this could be a big season for West Ham. And then Spurs, I mean, the top 8 is really, really hard to predict. My logic on Spurs is that they're very one-dimensional. And unless Postecoglou does something to be a bit more tactically, I don't know what the word, a bit more tactical now, let's say, I just think they're going to get figured out and they're not going to have a great season. What do you guys think? Do you disagree with any of that stuff?
I think that's a sensible 5 there between 8th and 12th, because I think these are the teams that can beat anybody on their day and lose to anybody on their day. I don't think Solanke's too detrimental if they lose him. I think, in a town where you're supposed to go and retire, they've got a lot of young players there, which is quite unique. So they've got some good players who I think will do really well, and I think tactically they're very good. Brighton, I can't work them out. They've taken a punt on a very young manager who got St. Pauli promoted. As much of a good job as that was, I think we overhyped German managers other than Klopp too much. And they tend to not really deliver when they go abroad. Again, Palace, if they sell Eze and Gay along with, Elise in one window, we could actually be quite fearful for them. And yeah, West Ham are building something, no doubt. They've got a solid squad defensively. They'll be better, and attacking will be quite smart. And Spurs, I think you could pick them anywhere between 8th and probably even 2nd, the way they perform sometimes.
I'll be honest, I think the Spurs one is the rogue pick here. I don't really recall Spurs not getting European football for a good number of years. I think if they sign Solanke, which I think is looking likely, they're finally going to be able to put Son in his correct position and have someone who scored 19 goals for a lesser team. Doesn't always work out. It doesn't always add up. Numbers don't increase or whatnot. But Solanke clearly knows the back of the net in the Premier League. I think it's very rogue on that when you've got teams that I think are a bit more in a struggle that you're going to put above them, looking probably at Chelsea, looking at United, who I don't think actually have improved, whereas Spurs look like they will have. I think defensively, Spurs have got the right players there. Their attack now, I think, when they sign Solanke, will be actually a very good, sort of a very strong attacking presence in the front four, for example. They probably need another sort of centre midfielder, but to put them out of the European places, I think, is very rogue. And that might just be Chelsea bias that you don't like Tottenham.
No, not at all. So I just think, again, if Solanke does sign for them, this is probably, again, more of an argument to put them somewhere in these 3 positions. But there's question marks over Spurs, basically, is the bottom line. Like, will Postecoglou adapt? If he doesn't, as I said, they got found out at the end of last season. They were embarrassing, and Chelsea had one of the worst seasons ever and finished 3 points behind them. So that is a factor. That is a factor we've got to consider. And again, I know it doesn't always work this way, but if that form continues into the new season, Spurs could have a rough season. I'll move on to 7th position and kind of touched on it already, but I think any of these teams I'm going to mention here could have been in any of these probably 3 positions, 5, 6, and 7. And that includes Spurs. I put my biases aside and put Chelsea in 7th position in the Conference League spot again. I'll go through my other 2 positions as well for now. I've gone for Man United in 6th, Villa in 5th. So first of all, Chelsea, as we know, the circus continues, the revolving door of managers continues, and the revolving door of players continues. I would be feeling very confident if we'd have kept Poch that we can make improvements into move up to 5th, maybe even push Champions League spots. But as we know, didn't work out. We've got a new manager in place, a new ideology. So I just think we're probably the biggest wild card in the league. If we're 12th next season, will I be that surprised? No. If we're 4th, will I be that surprised? No. Like, we could be really any of these positions here. So yeah, I don't know what to predict. So my logic would put us 7th. I still think we're better than Spurs and we have a better squad than Spurs, even though they've had a season under their manager. But moving up, obviously to 5th and 6th, just a little bit more stability is why I put Villa and United ahead of us and Spurs. So United, yes, there's still question marks over is Ten Hag the right man? And I don't particularly think their signings really improved them that much, but there is stability. Ten Hag's been there for a few years. He's won trophies. So there's an argument for them to go higher up the table. And then for Villa, they're looking good. Massive, massive season for Villa. They're in the Champions League. They've got a good manager. I like their signings. I love their squad. I think if they can really stabilise in this position, they're going to be a real threat. And I just think they're better quality based on what we saw last season. What do you guys think?
I think the Chelsea one, I heard someone say, a Chelsea fan say, sort of, the problem you've got as a club at the moment is no one's actually really talking about you on the pitch. And I don't know, you probably don't know your own style. So how Chelsea are going to play when they play City in the first game of the season. You probably don't have a clue. And that was what she was saying. And she said, if you think you can predict Chelsea this season, you're lying, pretty much, because Chelsea can do anything. And you sort of said it yourself, could come in the top 4, could come 12th. And that's a massive problem, because the one thing that puts you up higher in these positions is consistency, and you just don't have it. And that's not just on the pitch, that's all out throughout the club. So that's a big problem. I think playing in the Europa Conference League this season is actually going to be a good thing, because you've got such a big squad, which you did a TikTok about, that you've got hundreds of players pretty much for your squad. I think it will benefit you having more games, because you can build up that consistency. When you come to Villa and United, United, I don't think have got better. I think they've actually got slightly worse. They've lost Varane, brought in Euro, and Euro's now out. They've signed the new striker, I've forgotten his name, and Højlund looks injured. And there's just nothing about United that sort of seems to be working. It's like you go and sign this player. Yes, you can be excited about him, and then he gets injured 5 minutes later. And then the Community Shield that's coming up tomorrow, you've got Shaw, who's a doubt. You got Maguire, who's a doubt. You had Mount, who's a doubt. And it's sort of like, it's just continuously, this injury list could be a problem for United. Then Villa, could just the Champions League be a distraction for them? That's the only question I have over it. And can Watkins have as good of a season as he did last season? Because if he does, then yes, Villa should be up in these positions. But if he doesn't, I don't see other players racking up the amount of goals and assists that he contributed towards. But I wouldn't know who to swap in these positions, really. It's difficult.
Yeah, I think other players for Villa will step up. Obviously, Diaby's gone. I think Bailey's going to have a big season if he stays fit. I think Morgan Rogers is going to have a big season if he stays fit. So I do think they can offload some of the pressure on Watkins. Obviously, time will tell. Reece, where do you stand on these three picks?
Yeah, I think they're sensible picks. Again, I get what you mean. You don't know what you're going to get with Chelsea. I mean, let's not forget they've made £93 million in sales, in player sales this summer, and none of them are starting players. That's outstanding. That's how you do business. So obviously their model is, let's loan out all these young players, get a fee for them for a year, and then sell them at a profit. It's a great business move. I see more people or more clubs taking that approach. But of course, Maresca has to hit the ground running, and he has to, balance a very big squad at this moment in time. So is he going to get time to do that? I think he will. but you can't just keep rinsing and repeating with the same idea. But yeah, again, I think Chelsea will give City a good game on the first one. It's whether Chelsea compete, when they're playing Leicester away, Southampton away, are they going to beat them teams? That remains to be seen. United, a lot of positive vibes from the final, but of course a lot of negativity going into that. I'm not sure what United fans are would take. Would they take sixth and maybe a trophy in some capacity? I'm sure they would. I know I would. And Villa, yeah, they might have the struggles of Champions League. Unai Emery gets a lot of praise, and rightly so, but I think as we've seen with him before, it easily goes sour and he doesn't challenge as well as he should. But I think they're all very sensible moves. It's just who can perform better out of the three, isn't it? Quite literally.
Yeah. And just one more thing I didn't mention was just our defence, Chelsea's defence in pre-season has looked shaky, which is a little bit of a concern for me. And that's why I didn't put us in fifth or sixth. Let's move on to the top four. So, Jamie, what seemed maybe like a rogue pick from you, putting Newcastle in fourth, I was sort of sitting there agreeing with. So I've put Newcastle in fourth position. I've also put Liverpool in third. Now, I'll explain these to you first and foremost. So Newcastle, yes, their signings have been embarrassingly weak, I'd say, for a club, as we said the other day, who's the richest in the world. But they have got a real team now, regardless of the signings. They have got a very good squad, I think. It looks like they're keeping Bruno. They've got Isak, they've got Wilson, they've got Gordon. These are really good players. And the big element, as we said the other day, to justify them being above these teams is no European football. And they will absolutely thrive from that. It was a big distraction from last year having the Champions League, although the fans would have loved it. And I think this is the season now where Newcastle need to take the ball by the horns and seriously start showing what they're about. Because otherwise, you're going to get in a position where they're one of the richest clubs in the world, but they're doing nothing. The fans will be patient, but you don't want to be waiting 5-6 years just to get, in the top four. So big season ahead for Newcastle. I think they can do it. And if they don't, I think there's going to have to be question marks over Eddie Howe. And then Liverpool, I believe it was you, Reece, who had Liverpool above Arsenal. I just think there's too many unknowns. Onslaught, cool, great job at Feyenoord, good squad, but he can't just copy and paste what Klopp did. And that is a big unknown element. So that's why I've put them third. What do you guys think on these two first before we get into the big one at the top two?
Yeah, I don't think it's a huge rogue pick to go for Newcastle fourth. I know a lot of people quite fancy them this season round. I know a lot of people have mentioned about their transfer business, but they're sort of maybe going down the Chelsea route of going for young, hungry players. I think the big difference is obviously Eddie Howe, like I've mentioned before, is the best at getting the potential out of them sorts of players. I think if the squad stays fit, and obviously with Tonali coming back, they've got a real good right to challenge, especially when they're at home at St James's Park, they're going to get everybody behind them. I think potentially losing Anthony Gordon would be a huge loss because, again, Eddie Howe has made him into an absolutely outstanding player. We knew he had potential at Everton, but he's seeing it at Newcastle. I think it'd be.
Is he going to leave? Is he really going to leave? I don't see it.
There's potential. I mean, like Liverpool are interested, aren't they?
Point.
And he's a Liverpool fan, so you name the price, he will go and he will push for that to go. I'm sure. But yeah, I think again, Newcastle, one of the teams I think a lot of us fear because they can beat anybody, as we've seen previously, anybody, home or away. That's how good they are. It's whether they get injuries or run out a bit of momentum that could really hamper them.
Yeah, obviously I agreed with you, Jordan, in these two positions, having Newcastle fourth and Liverpool third. Newcastle, I understand what you're saying with them. It's not been an overwhelming transfer window, but no one's had an overwhelming transfer window. And if they do go and sign Gahey, for example, and keep Bruno Guimaraes, then I think they've actually got a very good team that could capitalise on Chelsea's sort of, inconsistencies, United's lack of sort of anything, Liverpool's new manager. I think it does it as long as they sign sort of one or two in the right players and slightly improve and not have as many injuries as last season. I think they should be getting the top four. Really thinking about it more and more, I'm convincing myself that Newcastle should be in the top four and even possibly being ahead of Liverpool. In terms of Liverpool, it's going to be difficult. It's kind of like what Moyes had after Fergie left. You're in a position where unless you go and win that league, there's probably going to be and it's unlikely, and it's probably going to be a drop off. And that's the problem. It's how big of a drop off this is, because being behind City and Arsenal, that's no criticism. But anyone else getting in front of them is a bit of a hard one for him.
Yeah, fair point. Right, well, let's get on to it. The big reveal: who is going to be second and who is going to be first? No, they're going. Man City, I think, will be the champions again, and I think Arsenal will be second. So, look, I know they're going. I know they're fighting tooth and nail for the last couple of seasons, and I know everyone's saying at some point City got to drop off, but the reality is Arsenal haven't really addressed their issues, and that's why I don't think they're going to win the league. Because yes, Calafiori, brilliant, but Arsenal were what, the best defensive team in the league last season. Okay, great, you've signed another defender, well done. So what, that's not your issue. Your issue is you're relying on Havertz to score you 20 goals a season. Your issue is Saka limps off after 80 minutes and you don't have a backup. That's the issue. So I'm not convinced at this present time Arsenal have addressed the issues that will take them that 5% more up the table. I don't think having people nick your wallets while you're eating dinner is going to get them extra 5% up the table either. And the reality is Man City are too good. They're too experienced. They've been there. They've done it. And until Pep leaves, I don't think that's going to change.
I'm quite surprised. I generally thought you were going to put Arsenal winning the league. But sort of, to be fair, just to touch on your Arteta point, look, you can't fault the guy for trying. He's trying every sort of, psychology book. He's been reading them all. He wants players to stay alert at all times. He's trying. So I don't actually criticise him for that kind of thing. Yeah, I was surprised to see this. I think you're also a bit harsh on the California signing, whatever it's called, because he comes in at the left back position, and that's actually the position that Arsenal needed to improve. Sort of Tomiyasu there, Zinchenko, they're not good enough defensively for them. So I think he does fill in a role. But yes, I do agree that you need a replacement for Saka because he can't play every minute of every game, because you'll literally get him having a massive injury and then he's gone for ages. And Havertz, he won't score 20 goals this season. So I think you're absolutely right on that. So it's a difficult one. I'll be very happy with this result, but I do think it is quite close.
Reece, where do you stand on it?
Yeah, I know that for those of you that haven't watched that previous video, I also went for City to be champions. I just don't think that Arsenal have it in them. These projects never work. And look, I know we looked good against Leverkusen in the week, and so did Gabriel Jesus for that matter. But I do and I don't look too much into friendlies. I don't look too much into that one, as nice as it is to get that win. I just think when we play badly, we lose. We don't seem to scrape a 1-0, and that's our big problem. We've got a tough start, but I don't think the tough start's a big deal. It's better to get that out of the way now than it is to have it in the middle of November or January, where teams really start to show who they are. So Yeah, I think it's a logical choice. I get where you're coming from, so I can't really critique that.
All right, well, there you have it. City champions. We seem all in agreement. And I'm saying the bottom 3 teams will be the teams that have come up. We've now released all 3 episodes on our predictions for the league. Make sure you've checked all of them out. Give us your thoughts on your predictions as well below. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.